It's time to think about the quilting process. And one of the most important things in the quilting process is choosing your back. We're going to talk about batting shortly. When you choose your back, many people when they're first starting out, they're going to pick muslin. They're going to try a sheet. Okay, neither of them are your best choices. You can stay with the theme of your quilt. Like this particular quilt here is a Christmas theme. You might want to look at it closely because we're going to stash this up in one of my other videos, Stash Bashers. So we have a Christmas theme. On the back is a print. It's a cream print. You want to have a print as opposed to a solid back, because the print will hide thread tension, stitch imperfections. If you have a solid back, you're going to see everything, all the stitches on your back. If you have a cream color back, you may want to think about putting a cream color thread on the front, just so that you don't see the back. There are some people who do like to see the stitching on the back, and that's okay. You just need to be a little careful about setting the tension on your machine. This particular quilt is the block that we put together, and it has several borders on it. This was quilted in variegated thread, and the back has several fabrics. I had these left over from another quilt, and you see that they're not evenly distributed. There is nothing that says you need to have a back seam straight in the middle of your quilt. It can be offset. You can piece a little bit over here and have your majority over here. When you have extra fabric, you can make a 4-inch hanging sleeve. And when you use the 4-inch hanging sleeve, you can pretty much put it in any quilt show, anywhere, because the 4-inch really takes all the pipe for any pipe and drape from any decorator that they have for the quilt shows. So this was just 2 scraps of Asians that I had left over. This quilt was also quilted in variegated thread. I think it gives it an extra dimension as opposed to the solid thread. And when you see all the colors in this quilt, it would be very hard to decide one particular color. So when you use a variegated, you can really spread the color around. Okay, this particular quilt, I chose to put 2 small borders attached to the inside to distribute the fabric. This was a leftover from another piece that I really liked, and it went perfect with this. So I pieced it vertical as opposed to horizontal because I was long arm quilting it. When you long arm quilt a quilt, you want to try to have your backing seams vertical as opposed to horizontal, especially if your seams are not so straight and you don't have the straighted grain on your fabric. You'll see a wave in your back after the quilter gets done. So this is batik. This particular quilt was quilted by my dear friend Jody Robinson, and it was pieced by my friend Debbie Stanley. This ended up being the cover on one of my books. I also like to Have my backs tell stories. You can use some of those novelty prints that you see and you're like, I don't know what to do with them. Put it on the back. Share a story. Share a memory. I live on Coffee Street, so I might put some coffee fabric on the back if it was going to stay in my house. My business is Frog Hollow Designs. I might put frogs on the back of my quilt. This was my pre-Weight Watcher back, and this has some adult beverages. There is a seahorse there in the beer, and there's some Cosmos, martinis, and that tells a story. I'll let you figure that out. This is New York Beauty quilt, and I'm well known for making the New York Beauty quilts. And this back happens to have some New York print, so it's going with the front of the quilt, keeping in the New York theme. I don't have to have a matching sleeve. There's nothing that says you have to have a matching sleeve. This is the quilt, one of the blocks that we're going to be making in the Stash Basher class, if you haven't seen that already. And this is all from my stash. All the black and white, it's all from my stash. So on the back, we went with the frogs. Another thing to consider when you're choosing the fabric for your back is seeing the stitches. You can use any color thread on this back and you will not see the stitches. Why? There's a lot of color, and the elements in the fabric are dense, and they're all together. So there's small pieces, like the tulips are small, and the frogs are small, so you can really get a nice overall quilting with that. If you had a solid, you would see all the stitch imperfections, starts and stops, but with the busy back, you don't see that. So have fun with some novelty prints. Share a story, share a memory.